Hi everyone, welcome back to Barrel and Irons. It's Sloth. Yes, it is Sloth, hidden behind the scarf, and myself. Today, we're going to be talking about West Ham versus Everton. This is the next game that we have. It's the return of the Messiah. It's going to be an interesting game, Sloth. Both teams not necessarily in the greatest of form, although Everton have seen an upturn since Moyes has arrived. But what are your initial thoughts on the game and how you kind of see this kind of meeting of West Ham and David Moyes for the first time since his ignominious end at West Ham?
Well, I think two people in the worst of form is probably best to describe us as well at the moment. My gran's died, and also today I had an allergic reaction to something that was in some food, so my face balloons, so I look like an elephant man if I take off this scarf. So it's like, I'm going to end this video by going, I'm a human being. It's I don't know how many people will have watched The Elephant Man these days, but it's
that's the kind of, let's face it, that's kind of what we're going for. That really sophisticated head.
Oh yeah. just me mocking it basically. It's a wonderful film anyway. If you haven't seen it, go watch The Elephant Man. But anyway, and funnily enough, I have a link to Everton and the Everton Man with Jolyon Lescott. So I went to watch a Anfield derby once, and I was sat about 3 rows back. The ball went out of play, and a massive fat bloke next to me just stood up and shouted at Jolyon Lescott and said he looked like the fucking Elephant Man. So it was, and it was one of those as well where you can tell the player hears it. So that made it extra special. Anyway, just as a side note, to get myself back on track because I'm quite med up. It's an interesting one, isn't it? I think you look at what David Moyes has done at Everton. He's done a fantastic job. I think obviously he's picked up a few draws recently, and when you look at the fact that they were against Manchester United and Everton, Liverpool, in fact, it's good draws, good solid results for where they are in the table. And
but then obviously, playing devil's advocate there, they did then also lose it. They were in a 2-0 very commanding position against Man United. They did obviously succumb to it being a draw. Granted, 2 exceptional finishes by Fernandez and Ugarte, but to be in such a commanding position as they was very much reminiscent of West Ham's. We go 3-0 up, and then it was squeaky bum time for us.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the key for us to get anything out of this game, I think, because it's one where I look at Everton and how they play, and obviously West Ham fans know it incredibly well with David Moyes. We're not going to bore you with a sort of breakdown of analysis on what Everton have done recently, because we all know it. And I was someone who was screaming out for Beto for years to join West Ham because he fits the David Moyes profile of a striker so well. And I just think that we've got to try and really thrive on what we did against Arsenal. And if we can take away the negativity of the loss against Newcastle, then I think we stand a really good chance, because Everton are a very good side in terms of the manager they now have and the players they have for his system. But I also think that they lack any player in an offensive sense who has the quality of Jarrod Bowen. And that's not me trying to, demean Everton or disrespect them in any way. But we have, in my opinion, better attacking outlets on their day. And in Bowen's case,
getting them on their day, though, isn't it, Sloth? I think that's the problem that we've got at the moment.
Consistently, I think Bowen is the only one who really performs and makes himself a match winner. So we have got to make sure we're strong defensively and hoping that offensively they turn up.
Yeah, I agree. Frankie pointed it out in the game against Newcastle. Defensively, we are looking so much better.
Yeah.
However, we still haven't quite got that balance in attack. I know there was quite a bit of discourse, shall we say, about the Newcastle game. I think there were patches where actually we looked pretty good in that, especially in the first half. Probably the first 10, 15 minutes we started brightly, but then we really stepped off and then allowed Newcastle into it. We kind of fell into old bad habits and didn't really offer much. Kudus had moments where he showed flashes of his former self. He's for me, it's not a player who's not trying. It's not a player that it's just a player desperately out of form and desperately out of confidence. A couple of the when he went clean through last season, he's putting Trippier out for a hot dog and then burying that ball, no question. This season, things are just not clicking. And to be fair, he's been honest about that. And I thought he did show points in the Newcastle game where he was looking a bit like his former self. He has still got to release the ball a bit quicker, but having said that, those were the same criticisms we had last year. But I think this year it's highlighted more because our form has been so patchy and he hasn't been scoring that. Now he's, when you see it now, that selfishness and there's not those end bits of product that we were seeing in the last year, it's harder to justify and to kind of support that kind of play. If he can start scoring, then maybe we will be a little bit more lenient. But he does have to do more for the team. I think when he is in possession, I do think he's definitely going to be an outlet for us against Everton. But as we say, Everton have looked a far better proposition under David Moyes. They're actually playing a fairly aggressive higher line at times and pressing quite high, which is slightly reminiscent to us when he came back in the second stint, in the basic COVID era for West Ham when we were looked so good under Moyes. It's very much reminiscent of that. And as you say, so a player that's massively informed for him is better. And yeah, someone, as you say, you've called out for, we both called out for him as well many times, saying that was the kind of player that Moyes really needed as a centre forward. It obviously didn't work for us, but it is definitely working for Everton. So what do we need to do really to combat better? If we also look at, he has been in good form, but there are elements about him, when you look at, say, the Wolves game where he can be incredibly profligate. So you can potentially give him an opportunity. And if your goalkeeper's on, feeling his game, he can make, I think, the wrong shot selection, and he is very one-footed. He loves his right foot, his left foot. He's not that, so he's not really there, I would say, in comparison. So can you combat Beto, who is in good form and who Everton do pretty much kind of put everything through? How do we look to kind of combat him and then again cause Everton problems going down the other end?
I think one of the key issues is you have to defend in a certain way that you don't rush in and make and try and make a challenge instantly, because if you do that, you have to win the ball. There is no way around it. He will either hold you off, he will shrug you off, or he will just flick it over you or knock it forward, and he's either winning a foul or he's clean through, and you're not going to catch him for pace because, as I said, he will just hold you off.
And Pinnock is a great example of that in the Brentford game, where he dove in a good few times against him and he didn't win it. He wasn't strong enough in that challenge to take man and ball, and because, as you say, that little dink from Beto, and because he has a good bit of pace as well, once the ball was gone, he was gone, and then you are completely reliant on your goalkeeper to bail you out.
Yeah, and I think you've almost got to give him a little bit of extra time and space. If you get involved with a physical battle with him, then you have to be prepared for a really tough physical battle, because he's not going to give you any inch in terms of pushing you back, in terms of trying to create an opportunity to shape his body and shield the ball, creating space for himself. He will do that for the full 90 minutes if you get into that sort of battle with him. Aerially, I think this is another part where Kilman's going to have to be on his game because, we've spoken about Todibo before, and aerial duels are not his strongest suit. So for me, I think you have to put Kilman on Beto and be aware that if you're going to try and squeeze him, play almost a one-on-one with Beto, then Todibo has to be aware that he can pick up in the spaces. And if Beto tries to flick it on, have Todibo 5 yards off him and ready to just run onto that ball, because Todibo can match him for pace, but he can't match him in a physical sense. He's not that sort of defender. And it's going to be interesting because we've got this dynamic as well where we have a very different sort of striker, and they have two ginormous centre backs, two man mountains in Tarkowski and
Branthwaite as well.
Branthwaite. And
Tarkowski is a guy that is I will say one of the luckiest players when he plays against West Ham. There is umpteen times in the last few times we've played him, he should have seen a red. Probably been in the last 2 to 3 games. There have probably been 2 instances where you go, that should be a red. He just seems to be one of the luckiest players when it comes to playing against West Ham and refereeing decisions I've ever seen. Because there are times where he pushes it so close to the bone, and I say close to the bone because sometimes those tackles are right on like a shin bone or something. And even I've seen him go straight in on the knee and still get away with just a yellow card, or not even a yellow card. He's such a charmed life against West Ham, I would say.
Yeah, and I think we're almost going to have the exact opposite sort of battle with their centre backs as the sort of one that we're expecting with Beto, where we have to get really tight to them both. We have to press them and make sure that we don't give them an inch, because we aren't beating those players in a physical duel. We're not beating them aerially. And if we give them time on the ball, then we're basically just inviting the pressure back on ourselves. And this is where I think David Moyes can really look to exploit us. If we try and play a high line, or under Lopetegui, we would have tried to play a high line while doing this. And someone like Beto would have just beaten the offside trap, especially if Mavropanos was playing, but they would have just beaten the offside trap, run through and tucked it away. We've got to be smarter than that. And if we, as I mentioned, play slightly deeper, particularly as we're now away from home, it's going to be one of those where we can start to utilize the pace we have and start to really make sure that we're not trying to engage in a physical one-on-one duel with these centre backs. That for me is going to be the key in where we win it.
Do you think, obviously we saw Paqueta come back into the team, the little dink that he made over, which would have likely been a soft, but also arguably a right penalty decision for us, for Bowen. He could be that player that can unlock that piece with one player coming short, say like Bowen, and Kudus looking to get in behind. Having a player who's willing to do that, I guess, more inventive pass and actually try and actually unlock a defence is probably going to help us a bit more. Because against Newcastle, we struggled in that middle third to really kind of break them down. For all of his hard work, Souček is, again, he is a lot of hard work and endeavour, but ultimately lacks the skill set in which to break teams down. Obviously missed for him what you would arguably say was a sitter. Probably came too early for him in the game, but for him, you would expect that at least to be on target. Alvarez, I felt, had a decent game, actually. But again, Alvarez was used in a quite advanced position, which is kind of against what you think we would have. So it does show our deficiencies in midfield, I think. We don't have to say the same quality in a defensive midfield to say that Everton does with Decore, who's been a bit of a revelation under David Moyes. And I think probably Alvarez is going to has to have a massive game against Alcaraz, who has been really good for Everton, especially under Moyes. In transition, he's been fantastic, and he's actually caused nothing but problems for teams. And it's another player that we've got to be very aware of. Obviously, I have Jack Harrison, who's been playing a bit more down on the left-hand side, who has a lot of pace as well. But Alcaraz, I think, is probably the player behind Beto that we really have to pay close attention to.
Yeah, and I think, Harrison's someone who has really struggled over the past couple of seasons. I am told as well he's a West Ham fan, so he's not all bad. Yeah, I think when you look at the sort of midfield that they've got at the moment, where particularly someone like James Garner has been fairly consistent. He's not been great, but he's been consistent all season. And I think that he's the sort of player that will work with David Moyes really well, because he's got great ability from set pieces, but he also covers ground and he's technically very good. And I think he's almost a younger, fitter, and bigger James Ward-Prowse. So I think he's going to be someone that David Moyes will really look to trust. But that whole midfield are almost tailor-made for him, in the sense that they are incredibly hardworking. They have size, strength, and particularly, like you mentioned, Decore, someone who has been fantastic, and I think a really underrated player in the Premier League for probably over the past decade. He's someone who is so strong, powerful, but also good at carrying the ball, that he suits exactly what David Moyes wants to do. And we at West Ham, it's like passing ships in the night with like centre mids who fit David Moyes' profile. And Everton had one for a long time that he wanted in Onana, and obviously he's now gone to Villa. But it's almost like we could well see the best elements of David Moyes come back to haunt us, and we need to be really aware of the physical and I would say industrious threat that they're going to pose, because they're going to work their nuts off. And if anyone's going to be up for this game, it's going to be David Moyes, to try and get them working as hard as possible.
Yeah, and I think that's a valid point. We can't allow ourselves to be outworked in this game. If we do, then we're dead in the water. Everton have been pretty quick. If you look at the Man United game, they started incredibly quick against Man United. They're going to look to do the same against us. If we rest on our laurels and we are too slow, then it will be an easy game for Everton. Everton will quite happily sit in and wait and kind of look to hold us off. And if we do kind of play in the slow manner that we did against Newcastle, we're going to struggle to create enough, which is probably why I would like to see the likes of, say, Lewis Gilhem play. Not that I think that necessarily he's going to tear things up in the game, but again, it's that little bit of an unexpected kind of, I guess, piece to the chessboard, and something that hasn't been used very much. And so to give him some true minutes and actually use his pace, because we've seen what Danny Ings can do when he comes on. Largely hasn't done very much. I think Evan Ferguson has flattered to deceive so far. Hasn't really done much for us at all. I think you've got to look at someone like Lewis Gilhem and say, go out there and show me what you're going to do. I don't personally see the point in playing Danny Ings if we're not going to give him a new contract in the summer. Personally, I'd be looking at players that I'm going to be keeping next year and saying, these are the players that I'm always going to call from my bench. So if Gilhem is part of that view, which is why we rejected letting him go in January, he needs to play over the likes of Danny Ings, because we need to basically invest in the players that are going to be here next year in that respect, and start to say, right, go and show me what you can do. Make a point. Put yourself in the frame to go out there. We're not going to see Somerville for the rest of this season, potentially even the start of next season. We know Lewis Gilhem can play on the left-hand side of a midfield, so why not give him a chance in a game to go out there and show what he can do? He's shown in little patches he can maybe produce something. At the moment, he's not really had much of a chance to show anything. So I would like to see us bring a little bit more pace in, because we are very one-dimensional in terms of that pace. And if we can get into a stage where we can have, say, Kudus, Bowen and Gilhem, then at least there is pace. And regardless, as we've said often, sometimes it doesn't matter how good the quality is, but if the pace is there and the pace can get you in, it can cause a whole world of trouble. And if we're going to be kind of everything in front of Everton, it's going to be a very easy game for their defence. Again, you pointed out, Braithwaite and Tarkowski are big, strong defenders. Unless you are going to get in and around them and trying to pull them out of position, you're not going to get much change out of them. And if we play like we did against Newcastle, it is going to be a very easy game for them to defend. And Newcastle saw that after that initial 10-minute flourish and the occasional times where we managed to get a ball in the channel, which Kudus chased down, we didn't really stretch or put that defence under any kind of pressure at all. And I think Barron had probably one decent opportunity for him, and he just kind of ciphered it at goalkeeper. We've got to do a lot more. We've got to be far more aggressive in our attacking play. I'm comfortable with how we defend, but how we get through the midfield and then into the attack is a concern for me. And I don't think we play with enough intensity at times or change the pace of our play enough to really hurt a team. Everton will be, as we know with David Moyes, happy to concede possession, happy to sit behind the ball. And he will be saying to the likes of Alcaraz, sit a bit higher, sit close to Beto, and we'll just hit. If we hit it long, that's fine. We'll do that. We'll hit it long into Beto. You'll get the second ball, and then we'll try and play from there. And even a couple of their goals have come from hitting it long to Beto, the defender then being taken out of the game because they've challenged, and then Beto running in behind, Alcaraz picking up the loose ball and then playing it in. So we've got to be very tight in certain areas, but I think we have got to be a little bit more expressive and a little bit more expansive. Otherwise, this is going to be, I think, a long and arduous game for all of those fans that are travelling all the way up to Merseyside. It's going to be a long old slog if it's going to be a war of attrition and the slow, you could say methodical, but I would say more laboured approach that we had against Newcastle.
Yeah, I think we have to be really on the second balls today. On the day, we have to be making sure we're trying to compete for absolutely everything. But if there's a second ball to be won, we're there and throwing ourselves into the challenge. I think if we do that, then we have the quality and, as I mentioned, particularly up top to hurt Everton. But if we don't do that, I think this Everton side will just physically overwhelm us, and particularly with things like set pieces, that's going to be a big outlet for them. But I just worry that we play a similar sort of lineup or midfield, and they're just not up to the challenge in a physical sense. And it's nothing against James Ward-Prowse, but I think this is the sort of game where I would drop him and either bring him off the bench if I'm looking to sort of utilize pieces towards the end of the game, or bring in Paqueta and have a three-man midfield of Alvarez, Souček, and Paqueta, so that you've got someone who can play those passes and find the forwards, but they're not just I'd say more reliant on set pieces. They can find a fine pass in behind someone. And Guilherme is someone who I don't know what's going on with him. We do know he's got the talent, and as you mentioned, he has got blistering pace that can hurt any defender. And we saw that against Chelsea for a small amount of time. But we need to see that regularly, as you say. And I think that this is the sort of game where there's something wrong. There's definitely something wrong with Kudus at the moment in terms of his confidence or his touch of quality, that maybe he just needs a bit of a rest. Maybe he needs to come off the bench and run at someone whose legs are a bit tired. And maybe this is probably not going to happen. But if you started Guilherme and brought Kudus off the bench, then maybe that's a way to try and address both of the issues. You give Guilherme minutes and see what he's about, but also you potentially boost Kudus' confidence by running at tired legs. I don't think that will happen, but I do think that What's key is going to be giving Everton problems out on the wings, but in behind their big physical centre backs, and trying to make sure that we are winning second balls so we can play those quick passes in.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that, as you say, that the midfield makeup as it was against Newcastle just isn't the one that's going to break down, I think, a team like Newcastle. I look at the likes of James Ward-Prowse, and whilst he has qualities that are good, he has qualities that, quite frankly, annoy and frustrate the hell out of me. Like I said before, when we bought James Ward-Prowse, we didn't need a replacement for Mark Noble. He is a Mark Noble, basically, in my eyes, in how he plays. I think he's maybe a little bit better because he has a little bit more pace, which means he can get about a bit more. However, he will turn around and play the simpler pass, and be it, especially when he plays in a deeper role. I think he's far too conservative when he plays a bit further forward in that midfield three, and almost as a 10. I think he actually is a much better player, but I don't see him being deployed in that way, which means we arguably don't see the best of him. Now, he has done quite well under Potter because, again, he is a player who will retain and everything, but I don't think he's a player we can rely on to start a game to help us break a team down. He's an honest player who will run his socks off, and he will run himself into the ground for his teammates. However, whilst all of those things are very admirable, they're not winning us games at the moment.
I think he just get bullied by Decore, and it's not a disrespect. Not a disrespect.
We've seen it. We saw it last year. You know, there are periods where a player with far more physical or even just a bit more pace would just tap it past and gone. We saw the same thing with Mark Noble. Combative, honest player who will give everything for his teammates and his team. However, a bit of pace or a little bit more strength and almost rendered redundant. And then there's that huge burden on the rest of the midfield then to cover for them. And that's how I see Ward-Prowse. That's why I've always said that when we play him further forward and almost in that 10 role, we kind of negate that weakness in his game. And he actually plays a lot better because he's part of the forward press. He has a great engine. And when he's playing in that position, fantastic. But then you then have that question as well. And then you have to play Bukayo much deeper. You have to rely on him far more defensively. Is that something we're willing and comfortable doing? Probably not, which is why we got then shunted out onto the left-hand side where he actually did quite well. So that's the stuff I think is the problem. And I don't think Potter trusts, say, like Souček to sit deeper with Alvarez and then play Ward-Prowse higher up, that he wants to play Ward-Prowse deeper because he's someone he can trust in possession. So I think we're in a complete catch-22 with that midfield three, as we did against Newcastle, because arguably that their attributes quite meld together fairly well. However, the problem is, I think, is how we then utilise them and how well they're trusted in certain ways in which Potter wants to play does mean that actually we probably don't get the best out of all three, which is frustrating. But let's go into what we think the scores could be. What are you hoping to see in the game, Sloth? Because obviously it has been, I guess, a bit up and down under Potter's, not necessarily been the most exciting, although we've had good results. Let's say like Arsenal. I wouldn't say it's been the most scintillating or exciting yet. But what are you hoping to see in this game, and what do you think the potential outcome could be?
I want to see a lot more energy and combativeness in the midfield. I think that's going to be key to us getting anything from this game. If we can do that, then it is going to be a case of, if our attack is firing and they can finish, then I think we should be safe. We should win. But yeah, I'm hoping for a Kudus turnaround and he makes me look a bit silly. But it's one of those things where we've looked defensively solid, or far improved from where we were under Lopetegui. And if we can apply that level of defending going forward, we just need to sharpen up in other areas. I'm quietly confident we might get a 2-1. I think we'll concede, and I know the defense has been much better, as I said, but I just think
I
that
think Everton have scored a goal in every one of their last games. Last 7 games, I think. So
yeah,
they're not a team shy in front of goal at this point in time.
yeah, and I think that we're not going to keep a clean sheet, are we? But it's one of those where I think we do definitely have the ability to win the game, and as I mentioned, winning the second balls, being combative and fighting for those scraps is going to be key, in my opinion. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 win, try and be confident, and we'll see what happens.
I'm weirdly going to go with you on the 2-1. I've just got a feeling that Bowen's going to turn it up against David Moyes. I think Moyes is going to have the Everton team really want to come at us strong in the first 10-15 minutes and really try and put us under the cosh and get Goodison Park going. I do think if we can quell that in that first 10-15 minutes and maybe get an early goal, then I think that would be Everton fans, I think, a bit like us when they're up for it, they're up for it. But when things start to turn, they can be a bit vocal towards the team. So I think if we can do that, we can apply a bit more. We can apply a bit of pressure. Like I say, it is going to come down to what happens in that midfield. If we can get a good foothold, then I really do think that we can cause some problems to Everton. Obviously, Beto's in very good form. Alcaraz has been in a very good form from as well. We have to be careful in transition, but if we do have the likes of Wan-Bissaka feeling, like he did against against Arsenal, where he was very good. As you say, if Kudus can have a turnaround, that's going to have no end of positivity for us. But like you, I just want to see some signs that now we've got a bit more of a defensive structure, that we're starting to understand how we want to attack and showing a bit more dynamism in that attack. And by that, I mean showing a bit more pace at certain times, changing the pace of our play and not being as pensive and kind of, I guess, waiting for an opportunity. Because for me, I look at the end of this season now as just a prolonged pre-season. The season's gone, it's over. We've got no fear of getting relegated unless something absolutely catastrophic and a miracle happens for other teams. We're in no danger whatsoever. So for me, it's just a protracted pre-season to here on out. So I just want to see this team starting to show some signs that they are starting to click in an attacking sense as well. But it does feel like very much when you looked at Brighton, when that transition from when he came in and how he was slowly but surely incrementally changing them out of that Houghton style, I think it's very reminiscent. And there's something we should hold on to is the fact that it took him a year to get, I think it was, went for a whole entire year of not winning a home game under Potter. And we've, I think, won 2 since Potter's arrived at home. So we're at least making better progress than what they did at first. But we just need to see that steady improvement, steady increase. And hopefully he utilises Evan Ferguson. I know I said he's flattered to deceive, but I think we maybe need to go into this game with more of a focal point and allow the likes of Kudus and Bowen to come later onto things and to cause more problems from deep and maybe encourage that defence to step out a bit more to kind of challenge them. So I'm hoping to see some changes, maybe Paqueta coming in, maybe Ferguson. Other than that, I'd probably keep it as it is. I'll probably make those 2 changes and hope that is enough of a catalyst to change how that kind of malaise that we had against Newcastle, where we were just a bit lackluster. But anyway, everyone, thanks for watching. I know I sound terrible with this cold and I keep coughing. Sloth is
the walking wounded, isn't it?
Yeah, Sloth has gone the full elephant man. Let's just hope that West Ham is the the remedy to our ailments that we've suffered from, and we can get 3 points. But let us know your thoughts. Are you feeling confident about the Everton game? Are you concerned? Are you more worried about losing to the game because of what will happen from social media if David Moyes gets one over us, or do you think that we have enough to win the game? But let us know. Like, share, subscribe, all of those things, And yeah, until next time, Sloth, one last thing, and that is come on, you
Come on, you
Irons.
Irons.